We begin the news in West Africa, where the Nigerian Senate has launched a comprehensive investigation into the utilization of the 30 trillion naira CBN loans during the tenure of former President Muhammadu Buhari, raising questions about financial transparency and accountability. This decision comes amid growing concerns over the alleged mismanagement of funds obtained from the Central Bank of Nigeria under the leadership of former CBN Governor Godwin Emefiele, with accusations of reckless spending worsening the country's ongoing food and security crises. The Senate on Tuesday announced the formation of an ad hoc committee tasked with unraveling the details surrounding the 30 trillion naira overdraft, including an examination of how these funds were spent during the previous administration. The committee's scope also includes an investigation into the allocation of 10 trillion naira towards the Anchor Borrowers Scheme, as well as scrutiny of a $2.4 billion forex transaction from a larger $7 billion fund designated for specific purposes. In the meantime, the Senate has accused governors of the nation's federating states of not doing enough to reduce the hardship being faced by citizens. This was as the Senate debated on the current economic situation in the country and resolved to investigate disbursements and loans by previous administrations amounting to almost 30 trillion naira. Amadin Uye reports.
The session on the floor of the Senate reviewed the ongoing situation in the country, especially in relation to the hardship being faced by citizens. While the Senate admitted there's a need for urgent intervention, the president of the Senate says that the ongoing hunger protests by citizens are unfortunately sponsored.
You can see a lot of sponsored protests here and there, but those people are not aware. Most of those sponsored protests are not aware of the kind of efforts being made by the Senate to tackle the situation, together with the joint management team of the federal government of Nigeria.
Lawmakers expressed disappointment at the conduct of state governors, saying they have not been starved of funds, but have performed poorly.
Each state government in 2023 was given 18 billion naira at once. Some of the governors that benefited from that 18 billion naira are here.
I must say that unverified report has it that each of the state governments in the last few months have received additional 30 billion from the Federal Inland Revenue Service outside their normal allocations, from the Federation account, outside their normal allocations.
What Nigerians want today is food and security. This belongs to the medium-term or long-term action that we need to take.
Others called for investigation of previous administrations to give account of monies expended, running into trillions, expected to improve the lives of citizens.
We said that the other monies that has been spent cumulatively to, was it 20-something trillion? That the details should be provided. It has never been provided to date.
About 20-something trillion. They knew nothing about it. They didn't know how the money was spent, what it was spent on.
The Senate resolved to set up a special investigative committee to investigate disbursements by the previous administrations amounting to over 30 trillion naira. This includes the controversial Ways and Means loans from the nation's apex bank and other interventions. In Abuja for News Central, I am Amadin Uyi.
To security matters, a bill seeking to amend Nigeria's constitution to legitimize the establishment of state police in the country has passed the second reading in the House of Representatives. The bill, sponsored by the Deputy Speaker of the House and 14 other members of Parliament, is expected to empower state governments to establish their own dedicated police agencies in order to tackle the escalating insecurity crisis in the country. Idong Joseph reports.
The call for state police seems to have gained attention in recent times, not only among lawmakers, but it seems the executive is also buying into the idea.
to provide for the establishment of state police.
Leading the debate for the bill which seeks to alter the nation's constitution and make provisions for the establishment of state police in the country, lawmakers say the bill will empower states to establish state police so as to be able to tackle the insecurity challenges in their states.
We have the likes of Amotekun, we have Neighborhood Watch, we have Ebubeagu in the southeast. What we're trying to do and what this bill seeks to do is to streamline those activities.
The bill comprises of 18 clauses that seeks to alter Section 34, 35, 39, 42, 84, 89, and 129 among other sections of the 1999 Constitution of Nigeria. The proposal for the establishment of state police was supported by many lawmakers, as they said this will help address the current insecurity challenges being witnessed. However, there are some who expressed concern, especially in the ability of state governments to fund the venture in the light of current economic challenges.
It gives impetus to the communities. You are so conscious that you have security. What we are talking about now is the legal support.
May be different from what is happening in Abia, may be different from what is happening in Kano, and the way to control it also will be different. So I believe we are in need of their need.
Many states are insolvent, unable to pay their salaries and other obligations. State police is not the right way to go.
Can the members of other political parties have justice in Edo? The answer is no. So while I'm supporting this bill, I want us to look inward.
It will be recalled that the bill calling for the amendment of the Constitution to legalize state police in the country has been rejected by previous administrations. While there have been fears that they will be used by political class to oppress political opponents, lawmakers are saying that with less than 400,000 police officers in the employment of the federal government, providing security for over 200 million citizens is a tall order. In Abuja for News Central, I am Idong Joseph.
Welcome back and thank you for staying with us. Now, the ruling People's Democratic Party in Edo State has started putting finishing touches to its preparations towards the party's state primaries. The current Deputy Governor, Shaibu, is one of those contesting to fly the party's flag come the governorship election in September, but he faces strong opposition, especially from Asue Ighodalo, who some feel may be the favored candidate. Now we're being joined by our correspondent, Bernard Akede, who is in Benin City, the Edo State capital. Hello, Bernard. Thank you so much for joining me. So, Bernard, it's actually just one day to the PDP primaries. How would you say the ruling party is actually prepared for these primaries, especially when compared to the opposition APC? What differences have you observed so far?
Okay, thank you for having me, Dashan. We currently are in the Secretariat Complex of the People's Democratic Party, PDP. That's the building you can see right there behind me. And we were informed today that there's going to be inauguration of a committee, I believe a committee for the election that should take place tomorrow. So from what we can see already, you're seeing that there's better preparation than what the opposition All Progressives Congress had just a few days ago. Also, we are informed that the election for the PDP is going to take place in one center, and that is the stadium, the tennis courts of the stadium, tennis complex in the stadium here in Benin City. If you remember, for the APC, they had their own elections in different wards. But for the PDP, it's going to be in one center. We visited the center earlier today, and we could see that preparation, in fact, is almost completely ready for the elections, which is going to be about 24 hours time. So concerning preparations, you could say that they're doing quite a good job. One could say that they've learned from the opposition, APC, who had their own election last week. And of course, you know, we already know what went down during the APC's election. So yes, I give them a pass mark for preparation so far.
Well, it doesn't looking around you, it doesn't actually seem to be as busy as that of the APC when you reported. But The Deputy Governor, Philip Shaibu, and Asue Ighodalo, both of whom we hear are the strongest contestants from the party. Would you say it's too early to actually make any predictions as to, who would actually win the primaries, or are there signs of who could win this already?
Some months ago, I had an interview with the Deputy Governor, Philip Shaibu, and he spoke with so much confidence back then when we met in Delta State. But then coming down here, you could almost tell from the number of billboards you see around, you have more of Asue Ighodalo's billboards in town, in the state capital here, than you have of Philip Shaibu. But I would say it's still early to call. Anything could happen on the day of the primaries. Judging from what happened during APC's own primaries last week, anything could happen. But word on the streets has a little bit, word on the streets a little bit higher for Asue Ighodalo than for the Deputy Governor, Philip Shaibu. Again, remember that the Deputy Governor, Philip Shaibu, and the governor himself have not exactly been been on good terms in the past few months. So some also feel that that could be a dent in his chances. But then again, I think we wait till tomorrow when the votes are cast and the results are announced.
All right. Now, do you think that the drama that the opposition, that's the APC, had last week when they conducted their own primaries could actually work in favor of the PDP and other parties?
I would want to believe that other parties would have learned their lesson from the APC. And quite one, speaking about the APC, we're hearing that they may be reconducting their own primaries tomorrow as well, simultaneously with the PDP. I saw a statement that was put out earlier. It just goes to show that there still is some bit of confusion within the party. But I would want to believe that other parties who are oppositions of the APC would have used whatever they saw last week as reference points and would have learned their own lessons, helping them or making them put their houses better in order from their own primaries. It's unfortunate that the APC had to go down, had their own primaries go down that way. But of course, being the first to conduct theirs, others would have learned lessons and most likely put adjustments to whatever plans they've had. So we look forward to see what tomorrow brings for the other parties and now for the APC again, if eventually they do have another primary elections in Edo State.
All right, so just before we let you go, Bernard, earlier you actually did say that the fact that the governor and the deputy governor are not or have not been in good terms would actually put a dent on the deputy governor's candidature. Are you saying that the governor would actually do, whatever it takes to jeopardize his winning the candidature?
Well, I wouldn't want to. I'm not saying that, and I wouldn't want to believe that he would do that. In the end, it's democracy. Everybody is allowed to contest and to win. But we know from, judging from history and from other elections, that whoever the governor throws his weight behind is in more of an advantageous position than anyone else. Saying he would jeopardize someone's chances, maybe using too strong a word or maybe going too far. But I would rather say if he throws his weight, behind a certain candidate, that candidate will have an offer.
All right, well, thank you so much, Bernard Akede, our correspondent live in Edo State, for bringing us this update. We'll definitely reconnect with you subsequently in our bulletins to, get more information on the PDP primaries.
Thank you for having me.
All right, when we come back, we will try to connect with our correspondent here in Lagos State, Omolola Ololade, who has actually gone out to find out the situation of things in filling stations around Ogba. We'll take a quick break and we'll return shortly. Thank you for staying with us. Now moving to other national matters, tanker drivers in Nigeria have been directed to resume operations following a crucial meeting involving key stakeholders and government officials after a 2-day withdrawal of service. The decision to resume operations comes after discussions between the federal government, Nigerian Association of Road Transport Owners representatives, and other industry stakeholders addressing concerns over the high cost of diesel needed to fuel their trucks for transporting petroleum products across the nation. Now, among those present at the meeting were the national president of NATO, Yusuf Lawan Uthman, Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, Oil, that's Heineken Lokbobiri, and officials from the Nigerian midstream and downstream petroleum regulatory authorities, as well as representatives from major energy marketers and Independent Petroleum Marketers Association. Now, joining me to give us an update on this is News Central correspondent Omolola Ololade. Thank you for joining us, Omolola.
Thank you, Dashin.
Okay, Omolola, now there are reports that fuel stations have actually, or fuel queues have actually resurfaced in most parts of the country. On Monday, we actually spoke to our correspondent in Umar here, and we're hearing that even in Lagos, some filling stations are actually selling for as high as 1,000 naira per litre. What can you say about this from the assessment of your visit to visit some of these filling stations?
Well, unfortunately, Dashin, it's so sad that we have to wake up to another, long queues in most filling stations, because just before we got to this last one here, we had visited about 2 or 3 filling stations, and we found out that there are long queues there. While some are selling, some have not even sold fuel, contributing to the queues. But this particular one, we noticed that although they have been selling, because the queue is quite long, but it's been moving just because they're selling. But customers are complaining of the price. They say they buy as high as 1,000 naira, though this particular fuel station is still selling at 800.
800 is also quite high, considering the fact that it's meant to be sold for 600 and something naira. But you did say that some filling stations have not opened. Have you heard of any report of hoarding of fuel?
Well, yes, that's why I said some filling stations have not opened. Even though there are, queues in front of them showing that people are ready to buy from them, they have not opened to the public. And, maybe because they want to be sure of the prices, because of the fluctuation in price, they want to be sure. Some have just decided to keep the fuel to be sure that, okay, we can sell at this particular price, or we cannot sell at this particular price, so they don't end up, shortage.
All right, so have you tried speaking to any of the drivers at the filling stations to actually hear how they feel about the long queues and also the high cost of petrol?
Yes, we spoke to some of the drivers. We spoke to them. In fact, a lot of Nigerians right now are angry. They are grounding. A lot of them are saying that, why are we buying fuel at this exorbitant prices? Some drivers said they've been here, as early as 6 a.m. this morning. And they, before they opened, because even initially, they didn't open the fuel station. It was just, shortly afterwards, they started buying fuel. And then even at that, they still had to buy as high as 800 naira.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Omolola. I'm sure you'd actually get more information on this particular issue, and we'll definitely reconnect with you for an update on this. All right, moving away from that, seaports play a crucial role in global trade and transportation. They serve as hubs for the import and export of goods via ships. Many seaports also handle passenger traffic, serving as embarkation and disembarkation points for cruise ships, ferries, and other passenger vessels. Seaports vary in size and capacity, ranging from small local harbors to major international shipping hubs. Now, large and strategically located ports can have a significant impact on regional and national economies by facilitating trade efficiency, boosting industrialization, and providing employment opportunities. Developing the eastern seaports in Nigeria has become imperative, considering the significant economic benefits it will bring to the region. In Imo State, the Oguta Lake and Orashi River served as a route for the export of palm produce, timber, and coal to the neighboring regions. Today, about 70% of the cargo that berths in Nigeria ends up in the southeast. This has sparked the call to develop ports in the southeast. Now, joining me to look at the economic potential of developing the eastern ports is Temisan Omaseye, former DG of NIMASA. Good morning, sir. Thank you so much for joining me.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
All right, so about 70% of cargoes that berths in Nigeria ends up in the east. What strategic move or steps should the governors in these states take to change this narrative and also ensure economic stability of the people in the region?
Well, first of all, the most important thing is that by virtue of most of the cargoes being discharged in Lagos and having to be transported to the eastern ports, it's having a major impact on our roads. And therefore, you find that our roads are not lasting for the period where it's supposed to last for. And also the level of accidents that actually happen on those roads. So therefore, there is definitely need for us to begin to look at alternative systems of transportation, of trying to get the goods there. And one of the major means of transportation, naturally, is to look at how we can use either the railway or also the inland waterways or the waterway system. And right now, unfortunately, our railways don't have an interconnectivity between the southeastern areas and the western areas and whatever else. So the options which are available for Nigeria right now is to rely very much on the waterway system. And therefore, it's very important for the governors in those areas to look. I'm quite impressed with the level of industrialization and or entrepreneurship of the people from the eastern region, most especially in the areas of Aba, Onitsha, and all those areas where a lot of goods are being produced, and also they import a lot of goods. So therefore, we need to begin to look at how can we assist them, or the governors need to look at how can we begin to assist them, because really and truly, one movement of cargo by say a barge or a self-propelled feeder vessel can carry up to 200 to 300 containers. That's almost 300 trucks off the road in itself. So therefore, there is need for that. And therefore, the southeastern people need to look at it. Because right now, they would not be competitive, even though their production costs may be low and they have good price goods. But once the transportation cost is too high, definitely it will have an impact.
All right, well, I seem to remember back in the days that the colonial days, the Oguta Lake and Arashi River were actually routes used for trading back then. How will its dredging revive the once vibrant and economically strategic channel in order to create jobs and also sustainable growth within the region?
It would go a long way because definitely what will naturally happen is that the goods themselves would be can now be the producers of those goods. I mean, in the good old days, the vessels that used to be used were smaller vessels, so they could come in and then could have a feeder system. But what needs to happen right now is for us to begin to see how we can begin to get those goods out to the big ports. Because right now, as you may be aware, many of the container vessels are being carried in 15 to 20,000 TEUs containers. So what needs to happen now is to see how those areas can be dredged in the first instance. And secondly, we need to get the assets. That is the key. That is the whole aspect of the cabotage. The whole aim of our cabotage is to develop indigenous shipping to create the ability for those kind of vessels to not only be built, but also be able to move on those areas, because those areas are low draft areas. So therefore, they have to build vessels that can come in there and move those goods out. And I can assure you, moving 300 containers, the economies of scale is a lot better than moving a container in individual vessels of 300 trailers.
Okay. Mr. Omache, now what about the Obeku Deep Seaport in Ukwa East local government area? What is its economic potential, and what role do you think that the collaboration between Abia and Akwa Ibom states play in dropping cost of shipping?
Well, I don't think that area quite simply is that there are two ways this can work. First instance is basically having a port where you can bring in reasonably large vessels. And I believe a port in Ebiaku or Ukwa East area, or collaboration with the Akwa Ibom state government, where they're looking at, I think they're looking at the deep sea ports there, whatever the case may be. But then you need to link that up with a railway system, and then therefore have some dry ports inland. So the thought really basically is that, yes, you can have a deep sea port out there, but definitely you can do an intermodular system, or you can have a shuttle system where the railway or the rails can actually move the goods and then create a dry port. Like you have in Kano, you have the Dala dry port, you have the Kaduna dry port. You can create a dry port, also the Insta ports, but link that port with the railway to the deep sea ports. And that in itself will also assist, because therefore, your cost of transportation will drastically reduce and therefore make your goods more competitive internationally. Okay,
we've actually talked about, cost of transportation, but what about infrastructural development? Let's imagine a cargo from Lekki Seaport to Aba. What infrastructural development do you want to see in these routes that will drive development in the region and also reduce the cost of shipping in Nigeria?
Well, first of all, as it stands right now, all goods are being discharged in Lagos. Majority of all goods are being discharged in Lagos. And I'm sure you're in Lagos and you realize the chaos which we are facing not only in Apapa, which is also extending to other parts of Lagos. Therefore, we must reduce the pressure we have on Lagos. That's the first instance. And therefore, my opinion quite simply is that Lagos should act purely as a feeder port. So you have the like Lekki Seaport, where cargoes can come in, where they are bringing in large container vessels, as I'm sure you're aware. The largest kind of vessels that can carry containers are coming to Lagos to Lekki Deep Sea Port. And what I feel should happen is that these vessels, because of the insecurity, so-called insecurity by the international shipping companies, these cargoes can be dropped at these ports, and then we as Nigerians develop a cabotage regime where we can move goods. Now, how do we do this? We can move these goods by taking them directly, because many of these ports are on the Imo River or up the River Niger. So what definitely can happen now is for us to see how we can get smaller vessels that can carry 100, 200 TEUs of container and begin to feed those inner ports. Economically, it will be cheaper because what will happen naturally is that you can build that cost into the cost of 1 TEU of your container. So at the end of the day, so if, for instance, you are shipping a good from China into let's say, Oguta, what naturally happens, if the cost of TEUs maybe $5,000, an extra $500 will be able to get those goods into Oguta. Those are the kind of figures we're looking at, rather than the cost right now of having to transport those goods, which have a major economic impact on not only our roads, but also on lives and properties along the way.
All right, well, thank you so much for your time. Former Director General Nimasa Temison Omasheye for joining us and also speaking on this.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
All right, the adoption of digital learning tools has become widespread in most Nigerian schools, offering a promising avenue to enhance education for learners. However, the accessibility of e-learning resources poses challenges, particularly in public schools, highlighting significant disparities in education across the country. Education technology experts emphasize the importance of government collaboration with the private sector to ensure all students across the country benefit from digital learning regardless of their socioeconomic status. Amalola Ololade tells us more.
Gone are the days of library visit to photocopy a few pages from an encyclopedia for a school project. With technology at their fingertips these days, school children now live in a world where education has changed and the internet has become their primary source of information. While the primary source of employing education technology in schools is to enhance student overall learning experience, there are also challenges such as the digital divide and limited access to technology for many students, which must be addressed to ensure that the benefit of technology in education are felt by all.
In a school, teacher comes to class, goes to the lesson, starts a topic. At the end of 31 hours, the teacher is out, regardless of if all the students understand or not. And it's not their fault also. There's a time frame to this. You have to complete the syllabus by the end of the term. So this does not put into account students that might be slow or that might not be so bright. But with U-Lesson, each student can learn at their own pace.
EdTech experts therefore emphasize the importance of collaborating with the private sector by the government in providing the necessary tools to aid learning for all students.
We also need to make sure that we can provide, that access and the tools like laptops, computers, iPads to children, to people all across the country, not just in Lagos, but everywhere in the country. So, government alone will not do it. I am a big proponent that we have to see a combination of both government providing the enabling environment, private sector, wealthy individuals providing the support and ensuring that we can get a lot more things.
Nigerian teachers say mobile applications or digital classrooms cannot replace physical classrooms. Rather, it will make education accessible to all.
Let's believe that a child can learn beyond the classroom. I don't have the means to afford uniform, to afford textbooks, to transport my child, to fuel my vehicle from one T to the other, to put my child in a school, but my child can learn at home. So I would say we should start looking towards digital learning for all.
The evolution of technology in education and the learning experience of students is a step in the right direction. Hence, the need for a technology-driven educational system cannot be overemphasized. In Lagos, for News Central, Omolola Ololade.
Now away from Nigeria, Senegalese presidential candidate Khalifa Sall has continued to campaign without or with supporters in a working-class district of Dakar, despite not knowing when the election will take place. Sall told supporters at a rally that he wants the process to continue since the candidates have been confirmed. 19 of the 20 candidates approved to stand in the delayed February presidential poll have called for the new vote to be held no later than April 2nd.
La proposition de loi votée par les députés ont été détoquées par le Conseil constitutionnel et qu'aujourd'hui donc le processus continue puisque les candidats ont été confirmés.
In the east of the continent, 4 police officers have been arrested in Kenya after detectives raided a house where 37 Ethiopians were being held about 16 kilometers from the capital, Nairobi. The officers are suspected of aiding a human smuggling and trafficking operation. The Ethiopians told Kenyan authorities that they were en route to South Africa in search of better lives. According to the UN Migration Agency, Kenya is a common transit route for Ethiopian migrants attempting to illegally enter South Africa. Authorities say search is underway for the owner of the house and other members of the smuggling ring. Now in Central Africa, Amnesty International has issued a plea for an immediate cessation of deliberate and indiscriminate attacks on civilians amidst escalating violence between government forces and M23 rebels in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. According to Amnesty, the resumption of intense fighting around the city of Goma has resulted in the deaths of at least 35 civilians, with thousands more trapped in the crossfire and in desperate need of humanitarian aid. The conflict, fueled by allegations of support from Rwanda to the rebels, has led to a humanitarian crisis with over 1 million people displaced in and around Goma. The use of heavy artillery and mortar shells targeting civilian areas has drawn condemnation from organizations like the Center for Civilians in Conflict, while France and the United States have urged Rwanda to end its support for the M23 rebels. In the meantime, the United Nations has imposed an arms embargo, travel ban, and asset freeze against 6 rebel leaders in the Democratic Republic of Congo amid violence in the country's east. Those sanctioned include the military spokesman of the M23 rebel, a general in the Democratic Forces for the Liberation of Rwanda, and 2 senior leaders in the Ugandan armed group Allied Democratic Forces. The others are the leader of the National Coalition of the People for the Sovereignty of Congo, a Mai group, and a commander in the armed group, Twirengho. The announcement followed a UN Security Council meeting on Tuesday aimed at discussing the dire security situation in DR Congo. In a related development, the United States envoy to the United Nations, Robert Wood, has warned Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of Congo to walk back from the brink of war as tensions rise between the neighbors. His warning comes amidst the United Nations call for $2.6 billion in aid to provide life-saving assistance and protection to 8.7 million people, according to its humanitarian response plan for the year. The head of MONUSCO in DRC, Bintu Keita, also warned about the possible spread of the conflict as well as the dire humanitarian situation on the ground. Kinshasa, the United Nations and Western countries have accused Rwanda of supporting a rebel group active in eastern DRC in a bid to control vast mineral resources in the region, an allegation Kigali denies.
Rwanda must end its support to M23. It must also withdraw Rwandan forces from Congolese territory and immediately remove any and all of its surface-to-air missile systems, which credible reporting indicates have been responsible for intentionally firing on the aerial assets of MONUSCO.
Issue must be resolved politically amongst Congolese. We will not accept this problem to be.
And now in business, oil prices recovered in Asian trade on Wednesday due to concerns over Red Sea shipping attacks and expectations of delayed U.S. interest rates cuts. Now, Brent crude futures and U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude futures rose to 0.3%, and the premiums for prompt U.S. crude futures doubled, encouraging energy companies to sell now instead of storing for future months. Vandana Hari of Vanda Insights noted a $6 to $7 per barrel risk premium at current levels. The ongoing Gaza crisis and attacks on vessels in the Red Sea continues to affect prices. Russia pledged to fulfill its OPEC Plus quota despite a decline in oil refining. Concerns over delayed rate cuts by the Federal Reserve have impacted the oil demand outlook. U.S. crude inventories were seen up last week. South African Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana will present his annual budget on Wednesday ahead of elections that could end the African National Congress's parliamentary majority. Godongwana is under pressure to stabilize public debt and control spending while also improving welfare grants and healthcare access. Key points to watch include debt stabilization, with the debt to GDP ratio potentially exceeding 80%, and new taxes, which could include a value-added tax increase. The Treasury may use part of 500 billion rand in paper profits to replenish its coffers, a move that could unsettle investors. Transnet, the country's freight rail system and main port operator, may receive further funding, and the government's temporary 350 rand monthly welfare grant could become permanent despite fiscal constraints. And now in the world of sports, Chut Njoya Jara has reportedly communicated her inability to recover ahead of Cameroon's crucial Olympic qualifiers match against Nigeria on Friday 23rd. Coach Jean-Baptiste Bissek has replaced the 31-year-old with Kameni Flora Alice of Eboloa FC. For country, Ajara has netted 15 times in over 43 appearances, including Puska's nominated goals against New Zealand in the 2019 Women's World Cup. Coach Bissek and his indomitable Lionesses continue preparations ahead of the crunch tie, especially as the Olympic Games is now seen as a perfect substitution for the 2024 WAFCON, which Cameroon missed out on. The Football Association of Zambia is saddened by the death of Copper Queens and Indeni Roses striker Norin Betani. Betani died on Wednesday morning at the University Teaching Hospital after being diagnosed with suspected malaria. FAS General Secretary Ruben Kamanga says the player reported to camp whilst unwell and was taken to the hospital for thorough examination on recommendation by team medics. Norin, who plays for Indeni Roses, was among the 30 players summoned for the Paris 2024 qualifier against Ghana, but was diagnosed with severe malaria, which left her hospitalized at Chawama Level 1 Hospital in Lusaka. And that's all at this hour. But before we go, let's take another look at some of our major stories. We told you that Nigerian Senate probes 30 trillion naira CBN loans under the Buhari administration. We also told you that presidential candidate campaigns in Senegal despite uncertainties over election dates. And finally, you heard that UN sanctions 6 rebel leaders amidst escalating violence in the DR Congo. Send your eyewitness report to the WhatsApp number on the screen. You follow us on social media. We are at News Central TV. You can watch News Central live on DSTV channel 422, Star Times channel 274, Avo TV, and YouTube. Many thanks for watching. I'm Darshan Usman.